David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
As we begin to talk about companies selling assets, I wanted to start with how commonplace is it?
Well, on the average, every 7 to 10 years or so, people are changing leases. They're upsizing, they're downsizing, in some cases going out of business. So every day, there's many, many people that are in that transition.
It's happening all the time, but individual companies only deal with it on an occasional basis. So
Correct.
What do you think the most important thing to consider when someone makes that decision that it's time for a change?
Well, if they're selling assets, number one is to start early. What happens is that most quote-unquote liquidators are called in the 11th hour. And then what happens is in the 11th hour, there's very little that can be done, and that is really kind of what we call package and punt. If the assets are valued well in advance, you can then develop a plan and see really what the marketability is. Personally, we've had some situations where we've had a 10-story building that needed to be liquidated in 10 days' notice. The client ended up getting $35,000. If they had actually 30 days' notice, they would have gotten literally $100,000 more. Time really is the main issue.
In other words, think ahead, be proactive on this because money is on the line.
Yeah, believe it or not, in a lot of cases we found that in looking at this several months in advance, even before you do budgeting, we can then take some numbers that will help drive that budget. We found that in the monies that we've gained clients, that it actually has covered the actual move fees.
Wow.
Yeah.
And in the process, it seems there is more to consider than just money. If I'm in that position of having to close down, move, grow, whatever the opportunity might be, I would have to be thinking about more than just money. There's personnel, there's leases lying on people. What are some of the things that people really need to think about beyond the bottom line?
Well, one of the main things is it really comes back to time again. You may have a really short move window and a lease expiration with a several $100,000 penalty to if you're not out on time. Again, if you deal with this well in advance, you can put a plan together that will really help maximize that outcome and really give you the assurance and safety that you want. The last thing you want to do is have the last pieces of assets removed the last day. People don't sleep well at night when that happens.
And what's the disadvantage of going that traditional route, of picking up the phone and calling someone?
Well, what happens is that when you're dealing with a liquidator per se, in some cases, the outcome is relatively unknown. It's not really plan and process based, it's transaction based. And you really need to look at a company that has a backbone, that has project management, that has the ability to track and manage the project and give you updates on issues in situations as they occur so adjustments can be made.
And by stereotype only and by generalization, and forgive me for putting this out there, but it's that you've got the big liquidation sale at a warehouse someplace, but there's so many new ways to sell today. You almost need to create a campaign or a strategy to maximize the return.
Yeah, well, your liquidator, or really liquidation consultant, if you will, should really be able to put a plan together for you to look at the various ways of selling. Everything from export to employee sales to internet sales to direct sales. There may be some things that in fact have to be scrapped. And what's the best way to do that? Do you just throw it in the dump or do you peel the scrap metal off? Is the company green? A lot of things to consider there. Yeah,
I was going to ask you about green initiatives. Recently, a friend tore down a house to build a new one, and they ended up recycling a large amount, everything except for the drywall that was recycled. Are you also seeing that today inside corporate environments where companies do have that green initiative?
Well, I'm going to ask your question slightly different, and that is, again, with time. And if in fact you deal with this well in advance, the things that would normally be thrown away may be actually exported. But absolutely, you want to find a company that's going to help you if, in fact, it's important to the seller to actually be able to separate those base metals or to separate the wood and the plastic so that those items can be recycled.
And you've been involved now in this industry for how long? At least 10 years, 20 years? How long?
Well, I've been doing it for about 22 years. Yeah.
And what have you seen in terms of trends? Is this something, because ultimately it seems you're more client-focused rather than focused on your own needs.
Yeah, the trends that we're seeing is that, well, the old days we would go in and buy assets for $100, $500, or $1,000, and nobody really cared. And that's just the way the business was. Now people do care, and they don't just care about the return, but they really care about the overall outcome. And we're focused more on really understanding what the client's needs are and what their goals are, and then delivering that solution that fit their needs, rather than just delivering the solution that we feel is best and most profitable for us.
It seems you have much more personal relationship, more client-focused relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And the clients that we deal with, for the most part, are using us on a site-by-site basis or on a national basis, where we may have a project to do 50 sites and we come up with a program to do it overall.
All right. Thank you.
Steve, thank you for having me.